Howdy y'all, welcome back to the farm. We're back out here with the Toyota 4Runner and we've got something we got to talk about. I've got some really cool steel ProComp wheels that I want to put on this thing so I can rock 33s on this 4th gen 4Runner. But there's an issue. We have some clearance problems between the brake calipers and the wheels. So, in order to get the extra space that we're going to need to fit those big meaty tires under this thing, we're going to install a set of SpiderTrax wheel spacers. Now I know this is real controversial for some folks, but SpiderTrax has a reputation for being the best wheel spacers out there, especially in applications such as this. They're made here in the USA with the best materials, chrome ollie studs. It's all done in-house so they can really control the quality. And I think it's going to give me exactly what I need to fit those big ProComp wheels on here. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started, taking the wheels off. We're going to get one of these installed so you can see what it takes to install it, and then we'll put the stock wheels back on today because we still can't fit those big tires with a little bit of lift. So, let's get into it. Alright, so the first step to getting this SpiderTrax wheel spacer on is you got to remove the factory tire. I've already removed the factory lug nuts using a 21mm socket on an impact driver. So we can go ahead and take this tire off. And now that the tire is off, you want to look to see if you've got any rotor retainer clip on your hub, because once the SpiderTrax goes on, this should be considered a semi-permanent installation. That spacer is going to cover your rotor. So if this rotor needs to come off, you're going to need to remove the SpiderTrax spacer before you can get to the rotor and remove it. In this way, if you need to remove the rotor, you can just remove the caliper, take the rotor off if you have to service the hub. My 4Runner doesn't have any bolt or any retainer holding the rotor to the hub, so I can go ahead and install as is. Now this isn't in the instructions, but I am going to add some anti-seize to this rotor so that I don't have any binding of the two different metals. This rotor is steel and this spacer is aluminum. The SpiderTrax has coated their aluminum spacers so they shouldn't stick. In fact, they shouldn't corrode at all because of the coating that they use on them. I'm going to go ahead and put a thin layer of anti-seize on this just to prevent any issues in the future. And luckily, because everything is really close to the shop, the anti-seize is not that far away. I did another video where I used anti-seize on the brake rotors. It was when I swapped out the hubs on the Ford Explorer. One of the things about putting anything on your rotors is you want to be very careful not to coat the brake surface. If you put anything on the brake surface, you're going to want to clean it off with some brake cleaner. Anything like oil, grease, you're going to want to remove that before you go out and use your vehicle again. Alright, so let's put a thin film of this stuff all around the rotor. It doesn't take much, so you don't got to glob it on there. In fact, if you did glob it on there, you're just going to run into more issues with accidentally getting some on your braking surfaces. Alright, there we go. So now that we've got the anti-seize on there, we're going to go ahead and place the spacer onto the rotor. Everything lines up great and there's a little bit of play in there, but that's okay because SpiderTrax has included these nuts that they're like the acorn style lugs on the bottom. They've got this bevel and that actually goes into the spacer to help center the spacer on the lug. At this point, you also want to get the included Loctite out of the SpiderTrax box and put a drop of red Loctite on the nut that's going to be going on there. Once you've got that on there, put it down in the bottom of that hole and get it started. I'm going to go ahead and get each of these nuts started before I bring you back for the torquing procedure. So now that we've got all the bolts started on there, what we're going to want to do is start torquing this down. The instructions say to torque down each of these nuts to 90 foot-pounds, but what I want to do is sneak up on it, so I'm going to torque them down in 2 steps. The first step is going to be to torque it down to 85 foot-pounds and then do that in a star pattern just like I'm putting on a tire. Then, after I torque it down to 85 foot-pounds, I'm going to go to the final torque of 90 foot-pounds and torque it down from there. From what I've read online, getting the torque right is key to getting these installed. So sneaking up on it like that, starting with a lower torque and then working up to a higher torque, is going to assure I've got an even set from my spacer to my rotor before I put my wheel on. Also, what you're going to need to do, especially on your front wheels, is you're going to need someone to step on the brakes for you. You could also put a pry bar in here to hold this hub in place so it doesn't spin as you torque it. But I got my little son in here today. He's going to try to hold down that brake pedal for me. All right, I'm going to zoom in real quick so you can watch me torque these. Go ahead and get in there and step on that brake. Oh, I'm sorry, I got to tell you which one it is. Is the big one. All right, first we're set to 85 foot-pounds. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, now we're gonna push it up. Now we're at 90 foot-pounds. All right, you ready to hold the brake?
Yep.
All right, hold that brake, buddy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. Yep. You know, I just gotta see it. Buddy, that's gonna look good. Man, it's torture having the wheels and tires. But just gotta wait, Gotta make sure it's all done up right, because you know UCAs and shocks are next. That's what's up. However, for now, we're just gonna put on these stock tires and roll with it. So get that tire set on there. One thing to check before you do install your wheel is that these studs your stock studs don't protrude past the mating surface on the spacer. If it does, it's not going to work out. You'll need to replace the studs in your rotor or your hub, or get a wider spacer if your studs from your factory studs stick out past the spacer, because otherwise you're not going to be able to seat your tire. So get that stock tire back in here. One thing to remember with this style of lug nut is that you have to get this shank inside the wheel for it to fully seat against the hub. I've done it before on accident, mind you. I did not know this at the time, but where I've seated the lip of this shank against the wheel, you really need to make sure to get that shank deep inside the wheel before it actually seats the tire. But I know that now. And now with the truck back on the floor, we're going to do the final torque of these lug nuts to 83 foot-pounds. All right, that's one down. I need to do this 3 more times, so I'm going to go do that, and then I'll get back to you afterwards. All right, and as you can see, we are all finished up here. We've got all the wheels installed with the spacers, and everything's torqued down to factory spec on all the wheels. Now there is one extra step that you have to go through, and that is after driving 50 miles, SpiderTrax recommends you remove each wheel and recheck the torque on each spacer, on each nut at 80 foot-pounds. If you have any movement at 80 foot-pounds, SpiderTrax recommends starting over the assembly process and retorquing down every single nut. So the next thing I need to do is put some miles on this, check everything out, and make sure everything keeps its torque. I'm really happy with how these look. Even with the stock wheels, we've got a more aggressive stance. The wheelbase is now slightly wider, and I just like the way it looks. I think it looks really cool. It was not a lot of work. Just for me, when I look at it, I can see a big difference in how this looks, especially from the front end. Thanks again for coming along on this. Once again, I know this is a very controversial subject for some people. If you have any recommendations, if you've installed spacers before and have any recommendations for how to make sure the installation goes well, definitely leave those comments below, because as I'm rechecking my torque, I might be looking to make some improvements on my install. Also, if you hate spacers, tell us why. Honestly, I've heard a lot of horror stories about spacers breaking, studs breaking, and anything we can learn about the install, what kind of product it was, is going to help us when making decisions about the equipment we're running on our vehicles. And also, if you could like this video, give me a subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. It lets me know that what I'm doing is helpful, and it helps other people find my videos. Thanks again for coming along with us, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye now.